Aceptar. Aceptar todo. Oye, música.
Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. When you hear that fiddle play, don't it take you far away to a land where we are free to celebrate Métis. Feel the rhythm in your feet, hear them tapping to the beat. Promenade around the hall to the Métis call. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. My eyes are clear, spirit strong. In my heart beats a song. Lifts my voice up to the wind. Brings my world to you. Breath on breath, a sweet exchange. Rhythmic dance, it's a game. Grows into a sacred fire. Land of the midnight sun. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Feel the power of the heartbeat and the healing of the drum. A gathering of nations, a voices raised as one. The spirit of the circle, our strength is unity. Aye, 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 aye. Sing in harmony. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. The music of our people. The music of our people. Ooh, celebrate. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. When you hear that fiddle play, don't it take you far away to a land where we are free to celebrate Métis. Feel the rhythm in your feet, hear them tapping to the beat. Promenade around the hall to the Métis call. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. My eyes are clear, spirit strong. In my heart beats a song. Lifts my voice up to the wind. Brings my world to you. Breath on on breath, a sweet exchange, rhythmic dance. It's a game, grows into a sacred fire, land of the midnight sun. Celebrate, come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate, stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. The voices raised as one. The spirit of the circle, our strength is unity. Sing in harmony. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. The music of our people. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. The music of our people. The music of our people. Ooh, celebrate. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. When you hear that fiddle play, don't it take you far away to a land where we are free to celebrate Métis. Feel the rhythm in your feet, hear them tapping to the beat. Promenade around the hall to the Métis call. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. My eyes are clear, spirit strong. In my heart beats a song. Lifts my voice up to the wind. Brings my world to you, yeah. Breath on breath, a sweet exchange. Rhythmic dance, it's a game. Grows into a sacred fire. Land of the midnight sun. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate.
Buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Bienvenidos nuevamente a este nuevo encuentro. El segundo encuentro de arte, cultura y diseño indígena de las Américas. Por favor, si necesitan interpretación en español o en inglés, sepan que hay en el panel inferior un icono de interpretation o interpretación y pueden seleccionar el idioma que necesitan. Si necesitan español, seleccionan español. Si necesitan inglés, seleccionan inglés. Por favor, recuerden mantener sus micrófonos silenciados si no son parte del panel, y pueden dejar sus preguntas en el chat y contactarse conmigo en el nombre Tech Support me pueden mandar un mensaje privado si tienen algún inconveniente técnico. Welcome to everyone to this new day of the encounter. Welcome to the event. Please, if you need interpretation, you can find English interpretation under the interpretation button in the lower panel of your screen. It has a planet symbol, so you can check that if you need English or Spanish interpretation, English if you need that one. Please remember to silence your microphones if you are not part of the panel. And you can contact me under the tech support. You can send me a private message on the chat box if you have any issues, and I will try to help you with that. Creo que es todo, así que pueden arrancar. Voy a dejar de compartir mi pantalla.
Vale, gracias. Hello, everyone. Greetings and good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to welcome everyone to our third day of these Indigenous Encounters on Art, Culture and Design 2020. We would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are here on today. While we meet on a virtual platform, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which we all call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving
responsabilidad en mejorar las relaciones entre naciones y nuestro propio entendimiento de los pueblos.
We are very grateful for our speakers, our sponsors and supporters. Thanks to all of you, we make this possible today. And I would like to give a special thank to the Canadian Embassy in Argentina and Paraguay, and especially to Beatriz Ventura for their continued trust and sponsorship and supporting this event during COVID-19 pandemic to maintain the commitments that were made between Argentina and Canada at the Cultural Summits of the Americas. I know, by the way, that Jeanette will highlight some specific endorsements that supported today's webinar during her presentation. But thank everyone that has made this possible. A reminder, please, as well, to keep your microphones, your mics off. And if you wish to register for the upcoming webinars, which there's 2 more left, please do it through our website, www.xi.com/2020. So the format of today's colloquium is meant to be a lively 60-minute conversation among the panelists and followed by a short Q&A. Please don't hold back and, just make sure that you type all of your thoughts and you type any comments that you want to through our chat box. And at the end of the panel discussion, we hope to have enough time for the speakers, to be answering most of the questions. So I will be introducing today Jeanette Shields. She will be coordinating today's webinar, which is called Truth Through Textile Art, a conversation about living Indigenous cultures, along with her guest speakers, Tracy Toulouse and Natalie Bertin. Jeanette Shields is the one who gives away and still stands tall. She is from Nuncha-Nult, homelands on Vancouver Island, and is a descendant of whale hunters and cedar bark weavers. Jeanette is also an emergent textile artist herself and a millionaire who uses art as a vital way to retain and sustain oral tradition on contemporary recultured clothing. So thank you all for being here today. Jeanette, thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Natalie. And here's, Jeanette, the mic to you for you to introduce your own colleagues. I hope you enjoyed.
Fantastic. Thanks, Claudia. I'll remember to also thank right out the gate our interpreters for their tireless support to keep the conversation flowing across cultures. And our panel has also agreed to do our best to pace ourselves so you're not rushing to keep up with us. So I have a humble little PowerPoint that I pulled together with our team, and I want to be able to share that as a way of sort of flowing the conversation today. And so thanks again to everybody for being here. And I'm going to take a moment and thank Claudia for offering the land acknowledgement. We both have our candles lit. We agreed to have our candles lit to wrap this beautiful planet that we're in with our love. And I also have a lovely copper here with water in it, which is something I've learned among the Anishinaabe-Moan. And after our presentation is over, all our good words will be added to a living plant so our ideas continue to grow. And I'm going to take a moment to do a land acknowledgement and say Ushukshikleets, Mississauga, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat. Thank you, and Kleko, for allowing us to gather on the homelands that I'm presenting from here in Toronto. And I wanted to acknowledge some comments from, I think it was Rosalia yesterday, and I'm holding feathers of one that was given to me and one that was given to my late mother. And this is the time of year that I lost my mother as well, this time last year. So I hold my tobacco ties. I hold a tobacco tie for all my presenters today in my left hand. I hold a tobacco tie for Claudia and all that her and her team hold up. And I hold a tobacco tie for Bernice in Beatrice in Argentina. And I will lay that tobacco down in a good way in Lake Ontario for us all to get through this season with as much grace as we can. So in that good way, I also want to thank the Canadian Embassy, as you can see, is one of our icons, because they made today possible. I would have been in Argentina. I have my passport. I would have used it to come visit you. But I also want to take the time to thank Imaginate and Film Festival, the Textile Museum of Canada, and Centre for Indigenous Theatre for also stepping up and endorsing today's work. They've supported some council, some grants that I've supported, and some conversations are brewing for partnerships and collaborations with all of these wonderful agencies. And most specifically, I'd like to thank Canada Council, and I'll get into that more as the presentation unfolds. But Canada Council for the Arts has been a tremendous support for me and my career over the years. So today we have 3 presenters, and this is just a really quick overview, because there's some people who like to know what the presentation is going to look like, sort of have an end in sight. And there's a lot of words here, but basically we're going to balance the conversation with reference to past, present, and future, because a lot of Indigenous worldviews use numbers to help us remember oral traditions. Some people like 4, some people like 2 to balance our male-female. The culture I come from, we like to balance 3, the past, present, and future. And even the braid of sweetgrass, I'm told among the Madeoin, also agree that the 3 braids represent balancing the past, present, and future. So we'll look at who inspired us, a little bit about who we are, and also the impacts of colonization on our practice as artists, because artists were a big attacked by colonization, because that's how we transmitted our knowledge. And then we'll talk about our current Still Stands Tall Indigenous Victorian Textile Art Project that I graciously was awarded $65,000 from the Canada Council of the Arts to engage other textile artists to help me with this really exciting Indigenous Victorian Textile Art Project. We'll talk a bit more, and then we'll do a little snapshot of the future and who we are as textile artists. So the guests that we have today are Tracy Toulouse and myself, and I know that Tracy was shy to go first, so I'll go first and explain a little about who I am. I like to think of myself as a change maker. I've had friends and colleagues describe me as an energy shifter. I'm unconventional at best. I'm a 2-spirit solo parent. I have 3 beautiful children. I'm only taller than 1. And I've also been an international guest speaker. I like to be a team leader. I'm a textile artist. And this little image up in the corner here is when I was in Argentina last year. So full circle, I'm back. And the project that I talked about last year has grown, and we're now moving forward with a much larger project. So I'll hand it off to Tracy. There's her slide there. Tracy, if you want to chime in and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Bonjour, everyone. Tracy Toulouse Dijnakos. I come from Sagamok-Anishinaabe, which is along the north shores of Lake Huron. in Ontario, Canada. For myself, that's always a tough question, you know, when it comes to who are we? But yeah, I'm just a humble person who came up doing something that I love, and I continue to do it. I feel that it breathes through me in the wake of my late grandmothers who gifted me with this wisdom of textile art and crafting. The name Swirling Wind, Bimshwemat in my language, is a traditional storytelling about that dancing
Hay
wind,
una narración en mi
which is our storyteller, who he was a trickster, and he's the one who brought the people. That dancing wind was the one who taught Nanabojo how to be a trickster, because he chased it for days and days.
From the original trickster.
Finally, when he caught it, all he could do was laugh and laugh. But yeah, so Swirling Wind was the name, the spirit name of my my daughter Silver, who is now gone ahead. And yeah, there's been a lot of life journeys that have brought me to where I am today, and I continue to move forward as an artist. And I don't like to use that word fashion designer. I just feel it has a lot of connotation around it, because I feel that fashion is temporary or disposable. And I feel as an artist, the work that I do is meaningful and tells a story. And I feel that all my work has always told a story. And it's a story that I like to share and connect people. So it seems to have resonated for a long time. And I'm honored that that you invited me here, Jeanette, to be on this panel. And I'd just like to say thank you. Oh.
Ooh. Shoot. Thanks, Tracy. And we'll jump right in with your slide, Natalie, if you want to tell us a bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. Hola. Thank you, Jeanette, for inviting me. It's great to finally get to see you face to face. Well, even though we're not face to face, and you as well, Tracy and Claudia and everyone else. What a privilege that we can be able to do this. This is amazing. To be able to talk to each other around the world and tell our stories, because ultimately that's what we're doing, is storytelling. And like Tracy and like Jeanette and many other artists, First Nations, Métis, Inuit, a lot of my work is based on storytelling. And I think that's a human thing. So the first thing I want to say about myself is that, as an introduction, is that I'm a human being, just like we all are. It's not necessarily about, you know, what my blood quantum is. It's about being human first. I'm also a hunter, forager, and land steward. A lot of my stories and my life experiences come from my time on the land. I do a lot of beadwork and I design stuff. I also do fine art. Fine art is actually what I started my professional career as a painter and also a commercial artist. And I jumped into beadwork. Beadwork has become a much larger part of my portfolio today. I go into schools and I am a knowledge carrier and educator. I have many hats, as you can see. I also curate different activities, community events, and I've done some art shows. But community is a big driver for me as well. It's part of that whole being human thing and coming together, sharing our stories and our experiences. So that's me in a nutshell. I don't have a spirit name because as a Métis person, well, we usually do, but we'll get into that later, I think, when we get into our past, present, and future. But you know, it's something that's missing, but I think we'll be able to talk about that later.
Excellent. So I'm just going to the next slide here, we wanted to frame the past also about looking at who inspired us. And, you know, at the center of my little collage here is my late grandmother, Ida.
Hola, no puedo salir del inglés.
And it turns out that my grandma sewed in residential school, and she maybe never had a lot of money, but she always dressed really well. And I can't say I have a lot of money in life, but I like to think I also dressed really well. And I really wish that my grandmother would have been able to had a life at a time when textile art wasn't outlawed. And we'll get into that on the impacts of colonization on our art practice. But my grandma didn't get a chance to go beyond sewing. She couldn't put art to the sewing, but she did knit sweaters. She was neighbors to the Cowichan people on Vancouver Island. And I remember her wearing her little mask and spinning her wool and knitting her little heart out, but also feeling really crushed because she would talk about how her sweaters would sell for $120, and then Hills Indian Crafts would mark it up to $400. So I think we'll also have a conversation today too about how we as artists and as leaders in the arts sector need to take a leadership role to switch that up, because a lot of trailblazers like my grandma would have, you know, sold things for very little money. But in time, I think we want to change that. Joyce Little, who is up in the corner here, Joyce Little is one of my all-time favorite mentors, Joyce Mahama Little. And I'm in this corner here, I'm wearing a pink dress with a butterfly on it. And out of respect for Joyce today, I actually wore my own dress inspired by her butterfly design, just to say, Joyce, you inspire me. And when I want to dress my extra best, I always wear something Joyce made, because it is always exceptionally outstanding eye candy. And Pam Baker at the bottom corner here, I believe she's Squamish and Musqueam Way is her nation out west. And we had a good chat because she had an evening dress. She studied formal fashion design, and she started out like me as a counselor, an addiction youth counselor. And so we had both humble beginnings, and she went on to study fashion formally, and she got an award in the United States. And I saw this video where her outfit came out with all these other black evening dresses with no art on it. And everybody else looked like they weren't finished. And of course she won the art award, right? Because her dress was just beautiful, up close and far away. It begged the conversation. What did this dress mean? And I had a chuckle with Pam, and I said, have you ever made native lingerie? And she chuckled back and said, no, but it sounds like you want to make it. So someday I'd like to have full moons and my family will know to leave me alone. So I use a lot of humor to move me through life. Angela DeMontney is also a mentor of mine, because we come from the small redneck town on Vancouver Island. And here we are taking up red carpet space at the Ritz-Carlton in downtown Toronto. And I just feel so proud that we can have humble beginnings and still be humble on the red carpet and really make it look good. I think the other thing, I don't have a picture of my late Uncle Jimmy, but do you see this Dr. Pepper clock here? That's Uncle Jimmy's artwork, right? And Uncle Jimmy had 2 fingers because him and his twin played chicken when they were 6 years old, and he lost 3 fingers on a chopping block. But he was still an artist, because he had the 2 fingers he needed, man, to be an artist. And I walked into his house, I say circa 1981, I was about 12. I walk into his house and I see a Dr. Pepper clock. And I had to say, what the hell are you doing with a Dr. Pepper clock? And he said, I got it at a yard sale. And I want to scrape off the paint and put an Indian design, because he says, as Indian people, we should look around and say Indian things. And he said Indian in a way that wasn't nasty. He made it sound okay to be Indian, because anytime I was told I was an Indian as a kid, it was like it was an insult. It was, you know, it was a nasty kind of thing to be called as a kid. Whenever people played cowboys and Indians, even the native indigenous children wanted to be the cowboys in my community, because that's how bad a reputation Indians have gotten through Hollywood. So my uncle really gave me creative inspiration with his humble 2 fingers. You wouldn't want to get close to him if you upset him, though, because he'd pinch and twist you. It's an uncle thing, I guess. But that's my humble little beginning on who inspires me, because we have to show respect to where we get our inspiration from. And so on this next slide, let's see who's next. Tracy, you've got your images up here for your inspiration.
These two images are of each of my grandmothers. And the picture on the left, the black and white, my grandmother is the woman standing on the right. She had just made those two dresses for her and her cousin because she was going to get married. So these are very humble dresses, but growing up as a child, she always gifted me these amazing works. I thought were just like, wow, you know, their house was very humble and they didn't have a lot. So I was very proud, and you know, it always struck me that, you know, somebody loved me enough to want me to dress well and wear dresses to school every day. So I wore those dresses, you know, till I couldn't anymore. So she's always someone who's still in my life in a spiritual way, and I'm grateful for that. And my grandmother Melvina on the right, she was a quilt maker and a dressmaker, but known for her quilts. And she was the one who let me play in her sewing basket, which I think we all used to do as children. And you know, sometimes she would, you know, shoo us out, go play outside, you guys. But yeah, she knew I had something, because she would actually let me use her machines. And that was a big thing, because if you broke her machine, oh, look out. But yeah, so my inspiration comes from the past, and it's always good to know where you're going by looking from where you came from. So I always pay homage to the ones that brought me here today.
Thanks, Tracy. Natalie, you looks like you have some strong inspiration as well.
I do. I'm so fortunate, and I totally relate to what Tracy just said about, you know, honoring our past. Well, first, I want to acknowledge my mom. She's on the left in the red coat. Red's her color. You know, she's a strong woman and is very resourceful and resilient. And when I was a child, she used to try to teach me how to embroider and how to sew and how to bake and how to do all those things, you know, because those are the things that were passed down. But, you know, growing up with three brothers, you know, no, I wanted to be outside with the boys. So unfortunately, as a child, I didn't understand or appreciate, nor did I have much patience at the time to really understand and appreciate what she was trying to tell me. But it was one of those situations where, you know, when she did teach me something, it stuck. And those were the moments where she would impart those special stories. You know, she would take those quiet moments to impart those special stories that were handed down from her mom and grandma and everyone else. So unfortunately, we didn't have the benefit of growing up near an extended family. My grandmother, her mother, had Parkinson's, and my only memories of her were of her in a hospital bed because she had lost her speech by the time I was old enough to really, you know, speak to her and have a relationship with her. My great-grandmother, her grandmother, actually died of tuberculosis. So she is buried somewhere in North Bay in a mass grave. So I didn't get to really get any of these stories from my grandmothers on my mother's side. But so my mom would try to tell me to share those stories with me anyway. And later on in life, when I did sort of gain, you know, a little bit of patience to do these things, then she started telling me more and more, which I very much appreciate. Now, my great-grandmother, that is my great-grandmother on my father's side, and my father was French, and so she's French-German. But, you know, being Métis, we're mixed. I mean, I've got a bit of everything in my bloodline. We've got, you know, Algonquin, Oneida, Anishinaabe in my family. We're like a real soup, a mixed soup of people. And I never knew this grandmother, great grandmother either, because my father had come to Canada before I got to meet her, before she died. And but I had a doily that she had made, and it wasn't terribly good, you know, but the fact is that it's the only thing that I had of hers, right? And it was textile, it was tactile, it was something that I could look at and feel and see. And even though I knew nothing about her, you know, one day, I mean, I kept it for years and years and years, and one day I realized that part of it started unraveling. Some of the threads were coming apart. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do with this? Do I fix it? What seemed wrong to fix it? Because things, the way I grew up, is things go back to nature, right? We go back to the earth. And so what I decided to do was incorporated it into one of my cushions, which is a project that I do with some cushions that interpret storytelling. And it was by putting that onto the top of the cushion and beading onto it, adding my art form, my present art form to this cushion, and spending time with it in that way, in that very tactile way where I could work with it and examine it and work with it and bead on top of it. That's how I got to know her. And sort of come up with impressions of, I wonder what she was thinking when she did this bit, or this bit's a little tighter than this part over here. I wonder what happened there. Was she mad at herself? Was she, you know, for making the mistakes, or did she forgive herself, you know? And I left the thread at the very end. She never tied it off. I don't know if she was planning on continuing it into something much bigger or what, but I left it alone. So I didn't fix what was happening with it. I just sort of added, and you know, and that's how I got to know my great grandmother. But you know, today there's so many artists. I've listed them here because there's so many. You know, Kaylin Baker, Cynthia Baumfleur. Some of these women, like Lisa Shepard, Naomi Smith, Louise Vien, Karina Wolf, I know them and have been able to work with them, have conversations with them, learn from them. It's been amazing to have contemporaries who can teach and to share and to collaborate with. But also my inspiration is looking towards the Métis women of Canada's past, who left us a huge legacy of beadwork that was misattributed because we weren't considered people until 1985 officially. So, you know, our beadwork was misattributed to other cultures, to the Cree, to the Anishinaabe. So looking at what they've done and studying their work, that's how I got to know a lot of them, because I didn't get those teachings from my grandma and great mother who were dead or passed on. So that's my inspiration.
That's an awesome segue into what we agreed to talk about next, which was how the past has impacted the past. This diagram really is just some features of history and colonization that went down in Canada, specifically the Indian Act and the outlawing our art in 1884 to 1951, in some places longer, but the other piece being that our art, our language, our ceremonies, all our regalia, when working in the museum sector, I pay attention to the dates on labels, 1884 to 1951. Keep that in mind the world over if you see any ancestral objects from Canada, because you know that was the height when our art was outlawed. And that's when a lot of art started populating people's collections, and items were seized. And I can say stolen because I'm not on the clock. That objects were stolen from our people because we were villainized, and we have the Pope to thank for that. and some of the conversations we heard already from speakers. Do you want to add? Under the doctrine of discovery, the Pope had a conversation after Christopher Columbus arrived. 1493, Christopher Columbus didn't discover anything because nobody was lost or missing. These explorers were lost. They were lost, bumped into what they thought was India, then have a conversation with the Pope, and the Pope says, interesting, if you find more lands with no Christians, you can claim it in the name of God. So to Natalie's point, we weren't considered human for a very long time in history. And if you're not human, as Douglas Cardinal last year pointed out, the Pope thought we were soulless, that we didn't have souls. If we're not Christian and we're not human, we're animals. And reservations are a place set aside for animals. What else do you gals want to say about the impacts of colonization on our art?
Well, you know, I think to myself, I mean, I know that Métis art in particular, I mean, it was, if you want to get right down to it, it could have been Canada. It's actually Canada's first art form. Now, I want to be careful here. Canada is a state, and is a political state, and the Métis are a creation of the merging of Europeans and First Nations. And so that is sort of like an effect of colonization to become the Canadian state. Canada is what it is. And so we could say that our art, the Métis beadwork and the sash, is Canada's first art form, but that's not something that we learn about. You know, it's hidden from, like, nobody learns about our art. And so it's lost. It's completely lost. Colonization has made it so that we don't really know the culture that started. Now, of course, we know that First Nations art and Inuit art was around before the nation state, right? And so that's why I don't say that it's Canadian art, because First Nations and Inuit are sovereign. And so, but still, even those forms of art should be celebrated and should be taught. You know, it's like, sorry, no, it's not Group of Seven. Group of Seven is great work, but there's stuff that came before that, you know, that we've left a huge legacy that isn't being discovered.
I agree. Oops. Yeah, I made sure I wasn't on mute. I agree with you on the distinguish of your Métis culture being something that exists with the nation building of Canada. There is that mixed ancestry, and even in that humble slide that I was sharing reflects trappers' wives, which was a unique feature of colonization, because instead of just raping and pillaging, they found that if you married us good-looking women, you married our trap lines, our hunting lines, and you married into our abundance. And so it would require wealth. And eventually explorers only married the mixed blood or the Métis women, right? And eventually, like, those women, because I'm humble to the Métis culture, like, no, I'm always learning, right? But what I understand is that women were often on the front line of mini fur trap, like traps, because men might go away hunting big game, but if we're home pregnant, we could still go check our little traps and feed our family without the need of men around if they're away, right? So when early explorers show up, women are on the front line of that, and we're not just, you know, helping them on the trap line, but there's some baby making, no doubt, going on, and mixing some ancestry throughout history, and eventually only marrying mixed blood wives. But I think the other element of recognizing, like, history, I did this slide last year at Argentina, so I don't want to go into it in a big way, but it's just a backdrop for people. But most important, I want to Natalie's point as well, I don't want to hear Indigenous people refer to ourselves anymore as pre-contact cultures. For me, my DNA has been around since time immemorial. It makes it sound like history started happening once the almighty white guy showed up. And that's not the case. And we're also not conquered. It's a very common thing I hear among our Spanish speakers, and I'm offended because I have a heartbeat. I'm not conquered. Yes, I might speak English, but I also wear my art. I kind of have distinct hair, right? Like I share my identity in a lot of different ways, right? And to say that I'm conquered in Canada is fighting words. So we don't ever refer to our peoples here as conquered. We're written into the Constitution now. Like we're not conquered. Is there anything else you folks wanted to say about that? We're good.
Yeah, I think I've you know, I want to let Tracy speak too.
I know. I got a note from Tracy that said, keep talking. So we'll jump right along here. So Natalie, do you want to jump in and talk up a little more about what inspires you? We're started getting into, you know, wrapping up the past and just sort of jumping into what inspires us.
Sure. What inspires me, what keeps me going is the search for my identity. When I first got into serious art making, it's been about, it feels like my whole life, because I didn't get that benefit of you know, the being with family, growing up with family, because we grew up in Toronto and my family's up near Nipissing. That's our, I guess, what we would consider traditional territories, Nipissing and Ottawa Valley. So all our family is there. And my mom decided, because of, you know, I guess this goes back to the whole colonization thing. I mean, they were very poor and they had to deal with all the racism and everything that went along with being a mixed blood person or Métis, and knowing that we had Indigenous people in the family and stuff like that, like First Nations people, as well as Métis and everybody else. You know, they got picked on quite a bit. And so that's why they decided to move, to have us grow up in Toronto. They thought it would be safer for us somehow. Wasn't entirely the case, but you know, that's the way it goes. And we had to be careful. Like my mom didn't really want us to tell people that we had Indigenous blood in us. She didn't want us, she didn't necessarily hide it, but she wanted to keep us safe. And so my entire life, especially since I started doing art, has been about reclaiming my identity, essentially, reclaiming our stories, reclaiming our history, you know, and not just, you know, I appreciate my French ancestors as much as I appreciate my Algonquin ancestors and my Anishinaabe ancestors and all of them. But I, you know, throughout my whole childhood, it was all about the French, right? We didn't get to hear that much. So it really, what keeps me going is all the new stories and then meeting others who also can identify with the journey I've been on and sharing with these people and collaborating and all these things, you know. So it's been quite a roller coaster ride, I'll tell you that. But that's what keeps me going is identity and stories.
That's awesome. In sign language, I was an interpreter for a conference once, and the conference was called Take Back Your Identity. And it felt so good to physically sign that over and over. Take back your identity. And I agree with you that art in so many different ways is medicine for me. I was raised in foster care, so I did all my time in white foster care, a lot of therapy later. I think I turned out all right. But there's a science fiction novel out there called Always Coming Home. And I think that's what my art represents to me, is a soft landing, always coming home. I'm never rejected by my art never judges me. Even if I make mistakes, I'm lovable. Tracy, how about you? What keeps you going, pal?
Yeah, for myself, it's, again, it goes back to the ones that brought me here and the ones that are ahead of me, those young ones, because we're always being watched and we may not even be aware of it, but there's people out there who are looking upon us, and they're creating that next path for themselves. So we're always teachers in whatever it is we do. So with my respect, I try to share what I know and what I've learned from my mentors, and share that with anybody who's interested in learning. So doing workshops with young people, with old people, teaching them a different way to do something, to be more efficient, technique, where to find inspiration, how to share contacts, anything that will support the art and support the craft. I feel that whatever's given to us, it's our responsibility to pass it forward, because that's the only way our nations are going to grow. And I feel honored to be here in this time, because I may not have had this opportunity to be an artist and to be blessed with this gift, 50 years ago. And I'm proud to see so many coming up behind me, and so many that are creating like, and there's so many advancements, like the acrylic, the way they're merging some of these new modern textiles, and it's a beautiful thing. And I just want to say to keep going to everybody who's working on something new. Go for it.
Beautiful, Tracy. I think of Pam Baker. We both know Pam Baker. And one of the things that she was asked is, after she got her fashion degree, she tried to start a school, Touch of Culture. She tried so hard to start an Indigenous design school. And one of the people in her world at the time said, why don't you just like cash in and sell your art and don't worry about the school? And she said, it's not my way. I'm only as good as what I can pass on. It's not our way just to cash in. It's our way to be able to pass that knowledge on. I know we're having a fun chat, and we're almost like really out of time. So I'm going to jump forward in our little chat. I'll just very touch briefly on what inspires me, and that's my children. I survived 2 cancers. I'm, 1 more year before I can claim remission. I have no delay button on me. I had 4 months stress leave from work this year, and I was at my midlife crisis. Do I do a PhD or arts grants? Well, here we are. And our president is, what if our art wasn't outlawed? That's what propelled my grant writing. What if the Indian Act did not outlaw us in 1884? So I was very lucky to receive a $65,000 grant from Canada Council for the Arts to do something called Still Stands Tall Indigenous Textile Art Project. So Natalie and Tracy are 2 of my participants. There's going to be 6 of us all together. We're all based in Ontario. So I've transplanted 3,000 kilometers away from my West Coast world. And my retirement plan is Ontario. I quite like it here. I know how to dress for your winters, and I avoid the season where there's any bugs. I stay in the city when there's bugs. But I do my best to celebrate the culture. And my late grandma was Killer Whale Clan, and my grandpa was Eagle Clan. There was some Wolf Clan in there too. It's a longer story. But in 2006, Sage Paul hosted, the founder of Indigenous Fashion Week, hosted an exhibition that I was gracious enough to be a part of called Indian Giver. And that's where I made these Victorian outfits you see online. So the success of that grant, or that exhibition, I made 2, like you can see my cedar bark, the cedar bark roses. I've since made a cedar bark hat. I'll go to my next slide. You can see this is a picture of my applique up close on these 2 cedar bark outfits. And I'm really proud to say CBC, Canadian Broadcast Corporation, used this image to promote me. I'm from a small redneck town on Vancouver Island, and I was in an article in a newspaper in Toronto that said, one of top 10 exhibitions to see in Toronto. And coming from a small redneck town, that is a big deal for me, because I have humble beginnings. My Auntie Dixie said that when I came into her world instead of foster care, she said that I had the place of honor in a cardboard box by the wood stove. People would come visit me in the morning. So we all had humble beginnings. This is the good-looking group of people we'll all make textile art projects with. We're going to make male-female textile art outfits. I have some Two-Spirit models in our mix that might be willing to wear these outfits. So like men might dress like women, because I'm a Two-Spirit woman as well. And even when I wear go back to that last slide, even when I wear this outfit, I'll wear my grandma's skirt, and I'll wear my grandpa's jacket, because I'm a Two-Spirit woman. I can get away with wearing a male-female outfit at the same time. So I'm excited. We have, Tracy is my Indigenous artistic co-producer. Tracy's been a mentor to me since I moved to Ontario. I think the best advice you gave me, Tracy, is sell items that are affordable so it'll pay for your table. Because you can't always have big ticket items, right? But we have Dolores Gall. I apologize if I spelled your name wrong, Dolores. I was trying to find out. I know she spells it quite different, but she's Cree from Timmins Way. And she was featured, most of us have not met. I know Bruno, Henry, and Jennifer and Tracy, but I still haven't met in real time other than this moment here. Natalie, who is Métis French multimedia artist. Bruno Henry is Haudenosaunee, and Jennifer's Algonquin. And Tracy represents Anishinaabe, and I'm not going to stop being New Channel from the West Coast, so my aesthetic will still be West Coast because I'm not going to make other people's art because that's not who I am. So it's not just my story to tell. So the goal of this project is for us all to make a Victorian outfit that reflects our aesthetic. And my goal, my goal is to see, I'm thinking fast, but my goal is also to see, because I'm an artist, right? I want to see the Indian Act projected that outlaws our art, the section of the Indian Act in 1884 that outlaws our art. I want our models to walk through that and still stand tall, because that's the name of the project. So this is the part of the conversation I want to ask both of you, why did you get involved? Because I just made a cold call to both of you. Do you want to play in the sandbox and be in this grant? And why did you say yes?
I'll let Tracy go first.
You've been tagged, Tracy.
A little bit glitchy. For myself, it's always a yes when it comes to collaborating with community, with the Indigenous community. It's always an honor to do work with you, Jeanette. You're very dear to my heart, and this work is something that's going to impact. It's going to leave something for the ones coming behind us, and there wasn't even a no for that. And I'm really looking forward to it, but just as a little sneak peek, birch bark, Victorian dress, can you picture it? So yes, I have a lot of fish leather. That's a whole process in itself to make leather out of fish skin, porcupine quills, yes, black ash, weaving it. So this is a really explorative chance to do some amazing work, and I'm ready to get my hands dirty.
Excellent. Yeah. Natalie, what prompted you to say, yeah, I'm just enthusiastic, please?
Well, did I mention I get bored easily? So yeah, it was the chance to do something entirely new, because I can't sew to save my life. I'll be honest with you right off the bat. I try, and sometimes, you know, I can fake it. So this will be a really great opportunity there. But
bueno, esta era una oportunidad. Cuando se trata de este tipo de cosas, yo siempre pienso en lo siguiente: las mujeres Métis,
their embroidery all around the world during, you know, the fur trade period, and it was misattributed. Now, could you imagine what would have happened if they'd have been able to sell their artwork under their name and to create their own fashion houses? I mean, Vogue would be a different place today, you know? And if First Nations and Inuit and Métis and the indigenous country of the people from everywhere were allowed to promote and create their own collections, you know, yeah. It would be a Vogue and Elle and all those magazines and the runways, they would be very different places today, and I think we'd be a lot richer for it. But anyway, so that's the driver.
Yes. Well, I think what stood out from what Tracy was saying earlier is that we are textile artists, her and I both. She's been my mentor, so we sew like a hot damn. I reconstruct garments, which is sometimes can be even more tricky. I took that tuxedo apart and put the applique on it, and then in hand sewed like a lot of haute couture, because I love what I do. I love what my hands can do. And what stands out is that the the hair that I think Tracy and I split and we agree on as textile artists is that fashion is super competitive. Fashion is conformist, fashion is elitist, fashion, and there's a lot of people who are making strides on that front. Textile art is timeless. Okay, you do so, Natalie. I seen your work. Okay, you might not sew an outfit from the beginning, you know, from top to bottom, and you might learn some things, or you might even find a skirt that you'll add art to rather than make it from scratch. Like it's about a fusion of cultures is what's happening here. And I think what we have an opportunity to say is to the fashion world, I'm not going to flip my finger up, but, you know, I'm just going to say, you know, I'm not going to flip the bird, but just recognizing that the fashion world has no place to represent art of living cultures. I have a heartbeat. And when fashion replicates our art badly on the runway, I'm offended. Mm. So this is our baseline, because it's not just my story to tell. That's why I'm motivated. I got highlighted by the Indian Giver exhibition, which put in, you know, that notion of Indigenous textile, Victorian textile art, which you described nicely, Natalie, as already existing. There was a huge amount of production because the fusion, we don't have porcupine quills where I come from, but because of my work in the museum sector, I often see that really natural bridge that people crossed because we were already mathematic and geography, you know, did a lot of geography. And so it didn't take any much. And our art is imbued with so much meaning. And we don't worship nature, but we see a lot of nature in our art, like whatever you're wearing on your pendant, maybe a strawberry, but it represents our relationship to the land, not because we worship it, but we're in relationship with, right? Yes. So we'll just look at the last couple slides and then get ready to open it up to our group, because if you can believe it, an hour has already flown by. I'm trying to find my button to turn the deck. I was asked to slow down a bit, so I hope I did. Natalie, do you want to give us a snapshot of a little bit about your present, and then we'll go through the few slides and then hear back from you about your future.
Sure. Well, my present right now is, you know, the cushions that I was talking about earlier. So these are a couple of samples, and I published a book with the stories that they interpret. So that's what I've been working on. And also this, these two masks that I created for a project that we started because of COVID. And we just basically invited artists to bead or create creative masks that are non-protective. My friend Lisa Shepard, who is an extraordinary traditional beadwork artist, and I came up with the concept to create this project. So this is actually going on exhibition over the next couple of years, and so yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
Would you mind showing us what you were working on earlier?
Oh, okay. Well, this is going to be submitted into the next round of exhibition for so this is a world premiere for this mask. so this is
beautiful.
So it's
very nice.
So it's called She Who Brings the Light, because the winter solstice, I'm thinking ahead to the winter solstice, and it's my favorite day of the year. And the caribou females, the matriarchs, are the ones who bring the light for everything to grow again. So that's the story there.
Excellent. Thanks, Natalie. We'll be sure to share the links with the organizers so people know how to access your book. And what are some of your current activities there, Miss Tracy?
I think there was a different slide, but just in terms of what I have in the works is doing a mukluk line with one of my sisters, something more contemporary and more contemporary in a modern design. I like to mix up the traditional with the modern to create something, a new way to do wearable art. And I also am working on getting a store, an online web store, Shopify, and trying to be more available to the public, so we can all represent ourselves. You know, that's a part of why we wear this.
Exactly right. You might have paused a little bit just to wrap up our conversation, and to even, you know, hear back from some of our guests, even how they might answer this question. I think it's worthwhile exploring, what do we want for the future of textile art and the message to the art and fashion industry? Natalie, do you want to start?
Well, I think, you know, you say it nicely when you say, I have a heartbeat. I mean, that's the basis of it. We're still here, we're still alive, we're resilient, and we're not going anywhere, and we're creative, and we have things to say and do, and we deserve a seat at the table, and we deserve our own product lines, and we deserve to be given equal chance, you know, to everybody else. And so, you know, and we deserve to pave the way so that the ones, like Tracy said, so that the ones that follow can also have a way forward, you know, lifting them up with each generation. So yeah, I mean, we're here and we're not going away. So let's all get together and create, collaborate.
Well, what I want for, thank you, Natalie. What I want for the future of fashion design is to take up more space, just maybe not in the fashion stream, that's just sort of not my pace, but just on the art scene, to be recognized as bona fide artists. And because we were outlawed for 67 years, I think our leadership, whether they're politicians or even, you know, Beatrice in the Canadian Embassy, if she's got the ear of some big people, to say that our art was outlawed for no less than 67 years under the Indian Act. We need a boost in Indigenous arts funding, arts exhibitions, and places to sell, because we got to stop the panhandling culture where we sell our art and then other people mark it up, you know, and get nosebleed prices for it. Or I also think that our own people need to stop exploiting our artists, because some of our Indigenous conferences expect $1,200 for an art table. And then I spend my whole damn art selling to pay for the damn table. Like, so our own people within the, you know, these national chief conferences or national health conferences, they have us have art tables, but we're getting ripped off. Even our own people are making money off us. So I think the future of art, we need to see protection of our intellectual and cultural property rights. I want to see copyrights behind everything. That, you know, Luann Neal, who's also one of my mentors and an outstanding digital artist, she did some neckties recently that I thought were quite beautiful. But she's got a real backbone and like will not let the leadership around her fade around the topic of protecting our rights as Indigenous peoples. And I think the state owes us that after outlawing us for so long, right? Tracy,
you know, if I could jump in, the other thing that drives me nuts is the whole silo thing. And when you go to a museum and you see the dinosaurs in this room and the Asia Pacific in this room and the whatever, you pick your subject matter, right?
Yeah.
And we're all in silos. And if they're not on scene, these beautiful artworks are put in a drawer.
Yes.
For how long?
Right.
You know? So anyway, we need a new way of doing things. So pardon me. That's why I jumped in.
Right. Awesome. Tracy, I know we've got a handful of questions that are starting to pour in. Tracy, did you want any comments about this last question here? What do you want the future for textile artists?
Hi, sorry about that. Yes, appropriation. It definitely is rampant, because definitely there's a spiritual connection with the art form for most of us. And it's passed down from generations. And I know in terms for yourself, Jeanette, some of these are only within fashion, our family lines. So for myself, I think you have to get permission. You know, that's where the disconnect is happening between the fashion industry and the arts world. So there needs to be.
You're related to that. I muted myself. You're not just making the art, you're related to the art. So what I was hearing you say, Tracy, is the art has spirit. It's not just good looking images on fabric, yeah? Okay. This is, we're gonna go to questions, but this is, we'll come back to this at the end of our presentation because I wish I could give you a giveaway. My friends, some of my friends know that I'm not Japanese, but I like to keep my hands busy and learn from other cultures. And I hope people will make themselves an origami butterfly. I'll explain that just before we end here, but I know that I have to find my glasses and admit that I need my glasses.
What an honor. What an honor. Jeanette, Tracy, Natalie, really an amazing conversation. I am so honored to to be part of this along with all of our committee, and as I said, the Canadian Embassy that has been so grateful in sponsoring us, and of course all the rest of the sponsors that have endorsed your your debate today. But super entertaining and lively conversation, just like the way you are. I know Jeanette personally, and so that's her. Great. I'm very glad to share you with the rest of our participants. So I have a few questions that I will do depending on the language that they were asked on. And so first one that comes up is in English, and basically this is what it says. Did the material, and it doesn't specifically say to whom, so you choose who's best to answer. Did the material itself from which textiles were produced have any spiritual value in indigenous religions? I know that spirit animals were a feature in totemic religion. I am wondering if textiles and cloth held a similar role as well.
I would start by saying indigenous people don't have religion. I think my favorite quote is, God makes me nervous when you get them indoors. Indigenous people are related to the land. We're land-based people. We don't do religion. We don't worship nature. We learn from nature. So our clan systems, and maybe not all nations, because we're not all one good-looking group of peoples, we're distinct nations, at least 65 distinct nations in Canada alone, that we will have clan systems. We might learn from those clan systems and the relationships. I come from the Wolf clan on my grandpa, Wolf Eagle clan on my grandpa's side. I'm always learning, and I'm Killer Whale clan on my grandma's side, and it took like more than 10 years to realize, my grandma's Killer Whale clan, maybe that's why I named my boy Ocean, right? Like, so I didn't know it at the time, but I named my son Ocean. So I think our clan systems teach us how to be in good relationship with the world around us. I'm always learning about Killer Whale clan. It's all about being family oriented, the protection of the pod together. And the other is, hearing from the other presenters on your relationship to natural materials and nature. Like, how does that inspire your art?
For me, I mean, I use a lot of the stuff that I find in nature. I mean, if I go fishing, I'll keep scales and dye them or wash them and use those as kind of beadwork in my work, depending on what I'm doing. So the same thing goes with quills. If we end up having a porcupine, I mean, these are quills that I will have harvested myself and dyed and things like that. Same with, when we go hunting, because we hunt and forage and do all that kind of stuff. And, we'll keep the bones after we've made the soup and made the grease and everything. Those go into a pot and get, you know, cleaned so that I can use them in some form of art. So to me, it's all about building that relationship and making it a profound relationship with the land, the animals, whatever it is that I'm using. So to me, it's not about religion or anything like that. It's about really learning as much as you can and being a part of it, and having a conversation, like a one-on-one conversation with those materials that you're getting from the land.
And it's also a matter of giving thanks for those materials. I'm a
Absolutely.
member. I would never not give thanks to those materials. I had one mentor, Geraldine Edgar Tom, who said in our language, when she was my mentor, we were harvesting cedar bark, she told the forest in our language, we're only here for what we need. We mean no harm. As soon as we've got what we need, we'll be gone. And that, you know, that tells us as well that we're not being wasteful. We only take what nature gives us. Tracy, I know nature inspires you. I see a lot of nature in your work. How do you relate to that?
Might have missed the first part of that question, girl.
How does nature inspire your work? Like someone used the word religion, and we've sort of been unpacking that we're a way of life. We're not a religion. And we don't worship nature. We are inspired by. How are you inspired by nature?
Well, it's my essence that we belong to the land, and there is no separation. So what we do affects the land, and what happens to the land affects us. So keeping that in mind, it's always, I try to keep myself surrounded by it as much as I can. I know we have to live in this modern way and technology, as we sit on a Zoom call, but I try to humble myself to it as much as I can, for myself, ceremony and spending time with other people and just connecting that spirit. So yeah, representing that in my work is essential. I don't think there's been very few times when there isn't a piece of art that isn't in my work, because without it, it's not art.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
perfect.
great.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
guitar.
I will get to another of the questions. This one actually will be for, resume. So many people kind of asked basically the same question, and it says something along this: does textile art and textile making hold a special significance within Indigenous women? Do you regard textile art as one of the few ways that Indigenous women's stories are passed on as experience?
I think there's a lot of
questions.
women.
A few questions asking if men are not involved. There's one here. If men have not been part of the textile art. Many questions about men, not if men are part of textile art. So I'll leave you to that with those two.
Well, we're a matriarch, so there's going to be a lot of women who will move that knowledge forward, because we're the ones who birthed the babies and raised the babies, so we're the knowledge carriers. One of our elders back home says we're the backbone to the culture of our community, because we're the first ones to sing to that baby even when they're in the womb, and teach that baby all along. In our work that we're doing, we have one man, the rest are women, and that's Bruno Henry, and I'm sure he feels like the luckiest man in the world, because he gets to be backstage in all states of undress with all the models, and he does outstanding work with leather. I cannot wait to see how his Victorian outfit turns out, because he is a very good artist with leather. What's your impression, Natalie, about the place for women? I think there's a lot of two-spirit energy out there as well, where maybe men who are bisexual, there might be, not to say all of our men designers are two-spirit, but there is maybe some inclination for some men to follow their artistic path. So our community doesn't split hairs on gender that way in many ways, but we see a lot more women taking up the textile art space. You agree?
Yes, I do. Traditionally speaking, the women are the ones who pass on the knowledge. Everything that you said, you know, I think we have pretty similar parallel views there. But also because during the fur trade, especially with the Métis women, when it first, you know, when the men were gone to do the trade or whatever, the women had to make money somehow. So they were in their communities and they were creating all these wearable items out of the wool, out of the textiles, beading on them, doing embroidery or whatever it was. And then that's how they would make money. They would sell them to a middleman who would then resell it to Europe, right? Because people wanted from real Indians. But anyway, I digress. So traditionally, yes, it is the women. And while they got together, I mean, they would get together and bead together as a group because that's how they held their own council. Like they weren't the official leaders of a community, but they were the ones who took care of community. So they got together, they would bead, they would create their textile wearables, and then, you know, also talk about what the community needed. So that's carried on even today. You see a lot of what we call bead-ins, where women will get together and bead together and learn from one another and create different things and pass on the knowledge that way. But we're also seeing quite a few men get into that. And I don't know, like I don't really, it doesn't matter to me whether you're gay, straight, whatever. To me, that's not even a question that's any of my business. So it's like, you know, whatever. So I don't know, you know, whether they're two-spirit or not, or, you know, gender doesn't matter, but there are a lot more men who are doing the beadwork and actually doing some really interesting designs and combining like newer materials or industrial materials into their beadwork and doing some really crazy intelligent things, you know. So it's just a fresh perspective, you know, coming from the male point of view.
There's an outstanding example of that, thanks for saying that, Natalie, of a contemporary artist named Barry Ace. And Barry Ace used computer bits, but he stylizes it with his Anishinaabe art, his beadwork. And when he had it on display at the Royal Ontario Museum, I did a lot of counting. I do that a lot in the galleries because there's a lot of combinations of 7, 4s, 13, and for different cultures, those numbers mean something. 13 full moons, 7 sacred teachings, how to live a good life. And so those numbers show up repeatedly in art, not by coincidence. It's very purposeful. So you're right, there are great contemporary iterations, and it's really whatever moves you. Same with hunting, like women hunt. Hello. Hello. Natalie hunts. It's good to know some of them women that know how to hunt. Yeah. Like we're not just good looking and don't get our hands dirty. Some of us get our hands dirty. And that's not gendered. That's just, if that's your thing, do it, right? And I think Western culture is more into splitting the hairs on the male-female role.
Yeah.
Okay, shall I go for the third? This one is in Spanish, so I will go for my mother language. Now, una pregunta de... sorry, I'm going to put my mute so that you don't hear. Una pregunta del sur de Argentina y Chile. ¿Hay movimientos que están generando un movimiento de protesta a través del arte con la simbología estética de los tejidos? Por los reclamos culturales... Yes, no? Sorry. I need to mute this. There. No, but if I mute that, you can't hear. Can you hear now? Una pregunta del sur de Argentina y Chile. Hay movimientos de Argentina y Chile, de artistas que están generando un movimiento de protesta a través del arte con la simbología y la estética de los tejidos, por los reclamos culturales y territoriales y la violencia hacia los pueblos originarios. ¿Ven en Canadá que esté surgiendo este mismo movimiento o uno similar a través del arte? Gracias y hermosa conversación.
I think missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls has a missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls has drawn a lot of attention in Canada through the artists, through the likes of Christy Belcourt and the moccasin vamp, like the top of the moccasin called Walking with Our Sisters. And she asked for 500 moccasin vamps, and she got more than 1,500, I think. I'm sure you know what that feels like, Natalie, when you ask for a call for proposals and you expect to get some and you get a lot. And that's certainly what happened with the Walking with Our Sisters movement. So missing and murdered Indigenous women is a current epidemic in Canada. My daughter, if you could imagine, you saw her pictures, good looking up and close and far away, but same as, I've seen Tracy's daughter, but we worry that our girls will go missing. That's the current times we live in. And so art definitely draws attention to those difficult topics because we're not an issue. We have lived experiences. That's something that I try to say in my professional life all the time. Don't call me an issue. I'm not an issue. I'm a heartbeat and I have lots of lived experiences. So I think, Natalie's work and I'm thinking of her last name, Shepherd? Lisa Shepherd, as your co-founder, Breathe has been a huge call for, awareness of what happens when two Indigenous women say, send us some masks. And social media has lit up with such pride from coast to coast to coast, with everything from seal skin to moose hair tufting to cedar bark. I added cedar bark to my mask, and I did sign language. I said, I love you with my mask. How does that to you as an artist, seeing that kind of response?
I mean, I think it's wonderful. Breathe is more about the Breathe project that Jeanette's referring to, that you're referring to, is more about mental health and getting through COVID together as a community. We can't gather like we do in a normal beat-in, so let's gather online. But a lot of these issues of racism, of missing and murdered women, of the Indian Act, a lot of these issues have come through in some people's masks because they're putting their emotions into these pieces, right? To try to get through and deal with them. But I wanted to add too that I was on the, Lisa and I were actually the first two people on the Walking with Our Sisters National Collective. So we were there at the very beginning when, we saw the call and we saw the initial response. And that was truly something very special and overwhelming. Breathe, yes, is great, but this was something very, very, very special because it didn't become an exhibition anymore. It became ceremony. And when all the communities got together and showed all of these different vamps laid out on the carpet, I mean, it was a very, very, very spiritual event that happened. It was like these women were there, even though they were technically missing or murdered, and it turned into something incredibly, incredibly special. And it traveled for 7 years and never lost momentum. So that's what happens when you do something to bring community together in such a profound way. It's just, it can't help but get you in and pull you in and keep you there,
Well, Tracy and I are super excited about where this project will go. As a co-artistic producer, we're aiming for a long-term project because the grant we got is a short-term project. It's like doing the Victorian baseline. And then what I'd like to see is outfits for the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, and see so that we can say to the art community at large, this is how good we would have looked on the runway all these years. And if you try to replicate our art, well, no, because there's no spirit. It falls flat and it looks cartoon. It looks amateur. So show us some respect our heartbeat, and let us, help manifest this long-term project so we can tell the world how to go the right way and have good relations and let people make, Indigenous people make their own art, because we're good at it. So let us be our own, have creative control.
Mm-hmm.
You're on mute, sweetheart.
I'll ask one question, which is, you know, quite trivial, but I think, you know, quite harsh. But I think it's important. Maybe you can make it short, and then I can ask one more question, and that's it. This would be in Spanish, so let me go off, and then that way you don't hear me twice. Natalie, cuando habló de quienes la inspiraron, solo habló de mujeres. Jeanette habló de mezclar prendas femeninas y masculinas. Panelistas hombres no veo. Estoy recibiendo con esto un mensaje ideologizado feminista de desprecio a lo masculino. ¿Es este el arte, la espiritualidad y la representación aborigen que quieren contar?
Well, I mean, you know, for me, I can tell you about the men who've, you know, the elders who've inspired me. Sure, I have a lot of male elders, teachers, whatever, but they've taught me how to hunt, or they taught me how to do other things. When it came to art, you know, it just so happens, and the textile side of things, it's just coincidence that it happened to be females. So that's just the way it's happened for me. I have a lot of artist friends who are male, who I absolutely adore their art, like Linus Woods and Arthur Schilling's son. Why can't I think of his name right now? That's terrible. Anyway, so you know, that's going to bug me now. I apologize for that. But anyway, so I do have, there are several, Joshua Paywis is another one who's a young Anishinaabe artist who inspires me to no end, and Jordan Strange. So these are all artists who absolutely do inspire me and have taught me something, or we've been able to collaborate. But in terms of, you know, whether it was specific to choose, well, it just so happens that my textile art inspiration comes from, and it's been handed down to me through my mother and through women artists.
I don't think the project was intended to be exclusionary. I authored it. You know, I just went with where the talent was. And as Rosalia pointed out when she presented yesterday, women's voices have been pushed by colonization. We have an epidemic of murdered and missing women. That's genocide, a living genocide. And women are the knowledge carriers. So, you know, strong women intimidate the shit out of men. And it might come across that we're being extra feminist, but we're just being our matriarch self. And we do have Bruno Henry, and like I say, I'm sure he just loves hanging out with all the gals, and he's talented in his own right. And I bet you if you asked him where he got his inspiration, he's probably a lot of women who inspired him too. And, you know, sometimes when we have colonization in these conversations, Western culture gets all bent out of shape because the boys are feeling left out. Well, you might have to get over it, because boys tend to have a little more highlight, you know, more airtime than women do anyway. So get over it. You know, we've got some strong female voices to speak our truth, and that's what we're doing. Unapologetically.
Will Tracy say something?
Tracy?
No, this male and female roles are both equally required in nature. It's called balance. So for myself, there's no distinguishing either. Obviously, the women were the ones who taught me because they had the skills to teach me. Yeah. Maybe the inspiration for the art would come from the men, because they're the ones that I would see most of the time out on the land.
I know we're nearly out of time here. I just want to make one last point, that if people could go to YouTube and Google easy origami butterfly and make yourself a butterfly to remember today. Butterfly is the gift of potential, changing from one to another. And this conversation is about speaking truth through textile art and raising the profile of contemporary artists. Oh, look, some of you have made a butterfly already.
Fantastic. Jeanette, I would like to just say some words that Beatriz had sent to the three of you. And she says, this honoring the past moves me. A speaker yesterday said, all of us, and a speaker who's present today in your webinar, a speaker yesterday said, all of us in the Americas carry at least a drop of indigenous blood. Mine comes from my great-grandmother, from the Huarpe nation in the Andes, whose women were wonderful weavers, not only of textiles, but also of straw boats, so well woven. Not a drop of water got into them. Weaving envelops us in culture to express affection and beauty and to confront the challenges of life. So I think it's a beautiful phrase to wrap up. Thank you to the three of you, and a big thank you to the rest. Muchas gracias a todos por estar hoy, por compartir. Gracias por todas sus preguntas. Si nos quedamos...
In sign language, this is how you can clap.
Si nos quedamos sin hacer muchas de las preguntas, por favor entiendan que el tiempo es limitado, pero todas estas preguntas van a ser pasadas a las tres ponentes y seguramente van a poder tener alguna conversación con ellas directamente, ya sea a través de nuestro website o en alguna otra oportunidad. Solamente queremos agradecer a todos por la presencia, por estar acá también. Aprovecho para invitarlos mañana al webinar que tenemos de interculturalidad y mujer indígena, que va a ser coordinado por Idoia Arana Beovide, que también se encuentra acá con nosotros, Cardinal, y Douglas Cardinal. Un placer tenerlo acá, un honor total. Y Liliana Kremer, y junto a 5 o 6 panelistas más de Argentina, Bolivia, Canadá y Paraguay. Espero que todos hayan disfrutado de este gran encuentro de hoy y los esperamos mañana a todos. Gracias, 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 gracias.
Besos, gracias. Thank you.
Besos a todos, gracias por estar.
Gracias.
Thank you, Janet. We love you, butterflies.
Bye. I miss having wine with
Gracias.
everybody. I miss
Excelente.
dancing and visiting. I miss you all.
Oh, miss you.
Bye.
Thank you, Claudia, for this.
Éxitos.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Todos.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Idoia, you.
The music of our people. When you hear that fiddle play, don't it take you far away? You will land where we are free to celebrate Métis. Feel the rhythm in your feet, hear them tapping to the beat. Promenade around the hall to the Métis call. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate the people. My eyes are clear, spirit strong. In my heart beats a song. Lifts my voice up to the plea. Brings my world to you. Yeah. Breath on breath, the sweet exchange. Rhythmic dance, it's a game. Rolls into a sacred fire. Land of the midnight sun. Celebrate. Come on, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people. Celebrate. Stand up, put your hands together. Celebrate the music of our people.